To Cheryl Harrison, books were the world, and the world was a book.
My lady, Lady Cheryl, are you there?
That voice echoed clearly through the forest of books in the dim, tranquil library.
My lady, Lady Cheryl. Oh, honestly, there you are. I've told you so many times not to read on the stairs because it's dangerous. Are you listening, my lady? My lady.
Suddenly the world, the book she was immersed in, was pulled from her hands, and Cheryl let out a pathetic cry. Her hands reached upward, as if chasing the book. And at the same time, the large glasses she wore slipped from the center of her face. Behind her long eyelashes, her ice-blue eyes wavered in confusion, before finally capturing the person who had snatched the book.
Oh, Sasha.
It's not. Oh, Sasha, I called you many times.
The person standing there was someone Cheryl knew very well. Her name was Sasha Alson. She was 18 years old, about 2 years older than Cheryl. She was Cheryl's personal servant, characterized by her short-cropped auburn hair and an expression that always seemed composed and cool. Having been together for over 10 years, the two were mistress and servant in status, but in reality they were close enough to be called best friends.
I'm sorry, I just got carried away.
It's not. Just. Really, Lady Cheryl, once you start reading a book, you completely stop hearing anything anyone says to you.
I suppose I'm not the type of person who can do two things at once. By the way, did you need something? I've already finished reading my quota of books for today.
I'm aware of that. I'm calling for you because, well, the king is requesting your presence.
Uncle?
Cheryl blinked at the mention of the unexpected person. Roger Lorenz, Cheryl's uncle, was the king of this country, the Kingdom of Elvisia. Originally, her father and the current king's older brother, Rudolf Lorenz, had held the throne. However, since Rudolf and his wife passed away in an accident 15 years ago, the younger brother, Roger, had occupied the throne. The late Rudolf had no children other than Cheryl, and Roger's son, who was currently studying abroad, was scheduled to inherit the throne.
It's been 6 months since Uncle last called for me. I wonder what he wants.
It seems to be a discussion regarding Ortegard.
Ortegard?
Ortegard was the neighboring country that had been at war with the Kingdom of Elvisia until just last month. Though it was called a war, there was no way the Kingdom of Elvisia, which had been struggling to protect its small territory for hundreds of years, could match the Ortegard Empire, a military superpower that had doubled its land in the last decade. After a small war that felt like an extension of a skirmish, Elvisia had finally suffered defeat last month. Cheryl let out a sigh, with a slightly dark expression.
I wonder why Uncle started such a reckless war.
While Ortegard reportedly suffered almost no damage in the previous war, Elvisia took a significant hit. She didn't know if the king intended to start another war, but if things continued like this, the country would eventually become exhausted and collapse. After thinking that far, Cheryl suddenly looked up.
Could it be that I'm being sent to Ortegard as a bride?
As a hostage? There's no way. Don't tell me even you believe those rumors, Lady Cheryl.
But it is a fact that Ortegard didn't demand our territory.
She didn't know if the stories about Ortegard's internal affairs being unstable were true, but despite Elvisia being the one to start the war, that country didn't demand the lands of the defeated Elvisia. Given that situation, a rumor had begun to spread as if it were the truth. Ortegard is demanding a noble lady of the Elvisian royal bloodline as a hostage bride, and the Elvisian royalty is going around bowing their heads to unmarried noble ladies to fulfill it.
Besides, even if the rumors were true, who would send away Lady Cheryl, an oracle of the Trinium Church, as a bride?
That is true, isn't it?
It certainly is.
Sasha said this with an exasperated look and a heavy sigh. The Trinium Church was a religion centered on the worship of the three goddesses, the goddess of knowledge, the goddess of strength, and the goddess of beauty. Its teachings were based on the myth that the three goddesses, sent by the creator god, guided humanity and formed the foundation for the three original nations, Elvisia, Virtua, and Irishtaria. An oracle was a being who received special protection from one of the three goddesses, with one existing in each of the three nations. They were said to be born into the bloodlines of the respective royal families and served as symbols of the church.
But there are few countries left that follow the Trinium faith. And to a rising, powerful nation like Ortegard, such things might not matter.
That may be so. However, if I were the king, I would never let a power like this leave the country.
Saying so, Sasha looked around. Spreading out before them was a vast and majestic library, a high domed ceiling, and long corridors that seemed to have no end. Tall bookshelves lined the sides of the corridors, and every single one of them was packed to the brim with countless books. The floor was made of cold, shining marble, and between the bookshelves were desks, chairs, and sofas for reading. This entire space, filled with the unique scent of old books, was the protection granted to Sheriru by the goddess, the power that made her an oracle. The name of the protection was the Ark of Knowledge. Also known as the Infinite Library, it was the ability to permanently store every single character the oracle had ever laid eyes upon. Furthermore, this ability was passed down without interruption through generations of oracles. In other words, this was a power meant to protect culture and knowledge that would otherwise be lost to time. Sheriru was the only human who could access this space, a place any seeker of knowledge would kill for, from anywhere. The method of entry was simple. She only had to take the brass key hanging from the string around her neck and turn it in the keyhole of any door. Even if there was no keyhole, one would appear on its own, so it wasn't a problem. While a keyhole wasn't necessary, a door was required, and the person turning the key had to be Sheriru. Furthermore, neither the lending of books from here nor the act of taking them out of this space could be done without Cheryl's permission.
By the way, what kind of book were you reading with such concentration, my lady?
Sasha said this as she checked the book Sheriru had been reading until a moment ago. The leather used for the book was dyed a deep blue, reminiscent of Cheryl's eyes, and the lettering was embossed in silver foil that brought to mind the color of her hair. And the title of the book, most importantly, was Sheriru Lorenz, Cheryl's own name.
My lady, this is…
Yes, it's my autobiography.
At Cheryl's words, Sasha's expression stiffened, and for good reason. In this library, there were several books that didn't exist in reality. One of them was the autobiography of the successive oracles. These were the histories of the individuals chosen as oracles, and they were supposed to appear in the library at the exact moment the oracle died.
Lady Sheriru, you're still alive, aren't you?
Yes, I'm quite well. I haven't even been sick for the past few years.
Sasha checked the title of the book once more. There it was. The name, Sheriru Lorenz. Sasha fearfully opened the book. She flipped through the pages and gasped when she saw the final page.
It seems I'm going to die 3 months from now, and in Ortegard no less.
On the final page of the book Sasha was looking at, a single line was written alongside a date. Before the eyes of the public, my husband, Lord Luke, heartlessly swung his sword and struck off my head. Several weeks ago, a cramped, windowless, soundproofed room. In this place, perfect for sharing secrets, the Emperor of Ortegard, Vincent Vatim, informed the man before him of a settled matter. The man called Luke raised the corner of his lip in an insolent smirk, despite being in the presence of the Emperor.
Marriage, is it?
What? Do you have a complaint?
No, I simply thought it would be something more dangerous, given you called me to a place like this. Well, I figured someone would end up drawing the short straw, but I didn't think it would be me.
Though he used formal language after a fashion, Luke's attitude showed no respect for the supreme ruler in front of him. In fact, it wouldn't have been strange to interpret his tone as mocking. Vincent did not grow irritable at this behavior, merely offering a single sigh.
But a former princess? Even for a hostage, the selection seems a bit weak. Wouldn't someone currently holding the title be more effective?
It cannot be helped. The king of that country has only sons. She was the only royal daughter with the strongest bloodline they could send to us.
I see.
Furthermore, she is an oracle of the Trinium Church.
Luke raised an eyebrow at the unfamiliar term.
An oracle?
You are aware that the Elvisia kingdom is a former religious state, are you not? Apparently, she is one of only 3 messengers of God within the Trinium Church.
A messenger of God. Huh.
That said, it seems she isn't actually granted any real power, just a decoration, a sort of symbol.
Luke looked visibly unimpressed by Vincent's explanation.
Then doesn't that mean she is useless as a hostage after all?
And yet, wouldn't she be the perfect choice if one intended to kill her?
The Emperor crossed his legs as he spoke, causing Luke to look slightly puzzled.
Kill her?
Our assessment is that the Elvisia kingdom will strike again within 3 to 6 months. If we drop her head in front of the masses at that time, the public's resentment should settle to some degree.
Luke understood what Vincent was getting at and nodded.
Ah, I see.
Half a year ago, when the Elvisia kingdom attacked the Ortegard Empire, the negative emotions of the populace were directed more toward their own nation of Ortegard than the invading Elvisia. Why were they being attacked by a country as weak as Elvisia? Were they being looked down upon? What was the diplomatic corps doing? What were the soldiers at the border doing in the first place? Those emotions erupted all at once, and public sentiment had reached such a fever pitch that it nearly escalated into riots in the imperial capital. The emperor, unable to regain control, managed to calm the situation by dismissing the nobles in charge of the military, but it was unclear if the same tactic would work a second time. However, if they killed Elvisia's precious oracle who had married into the country as a hostage, they could demonstrate to the citizens that Ortegard was taking a firm stand against that nation.
You are aware of the large-scale internal rebellion 3 years ago, aren't you? We must solidify our internal affairs first. Honestly, we cannot afford to be bothered with a war against a minor power like Elvisia.
In other words, for the sake of our citizens' feelings, I am to wed the former princess of a defeated nation and kill her when the time comes?
Well, I imagine even someone like you might feel a pang of conscience.
Luke's laughter cut off Vincent's words. He narrowed his eyes and twisted his mouth, as if finding the whole thing profoundly entertaining. Vincent furrowed his brow, making no effort to hide his disgust at Luke's expression.
No, I just thought you were asking me to do something quite interesting. By the way, what is my reward if I agree to this?
I will lease the rights to the Rossberg mine to you for a fixed period, which you have been demanding for some time.
Lease?
Fine, I will transfer ownership.
Thank you very much.
So, about this matter?
Of course I accept.
Are you sure?
It is fine. In fact, I am relieved it isn't a normal marriage.
Luke stood up from the sofa as if to conclude the conversation. He then looked down at Vincent. A hint of madness flickered in his narrowed eyes.
After all, if it is a toy that is going to be broken eventually, it doesn't matter how roughly I play with it, does it?
At Luke's words, Vincent's face contorted with even stronger revulsion. Luke's smile deepened, as if he found that expression incredibly amusing.
Please, don't look at me like that. You are the one who issued such a terrible order, are you not? Ah, how tragic. My bride is coming to this country, just to be killed.
Luke continued in a mockingly theatrical tone. He walked toward the door and placed his hand on the knob.
If you will excuse me, I must get home quickly and prepare to welcome my poor bride.
Until the moment he closed the door, the smile never left Luke's face. The sound of the door closing echoed through the quiet room, followed immediately by the sound of humming from the other side. It seemed he was very fond of this assignment. In the room Luke had vacated, the Emperor sank deep into the sofa. An attendant with a worried face then spoke softly to Vincent.
Is this all right? Leaving it to that man?
It cannot be helped. No matter how much money you pile up, a normal person would not want to do such a thing.
The attendant stared at the door where Luke had disappeared.
But To think there is actually a person who could do such a thing for their own territory and greed.
Truly, killing a bride who has only just arrived is a deed that can only be done by someone without a drop of human blood in their veins.
After saying that much, Vincent spat out a low curse toward the door.
The Reaper.
This conversation took place in the corridor leading to the audience chamber.
My lady, let's stop this. Let's not go to the king after all. If you meet him like this, he'll force this marriage through no matter what.
But Sasha, even if we drag the situation out, it's not as if anything will change.
But still.
Besides, it's not certain that the reason my uncle called for me today is because of the marriage.
Cheryl's response was detached, almost as if it concerned someone else. Sasha grew frustrated, raising her voice. Fortunately or not, there was no one else in the corridor at the moment. Even so, they lowered their volume slightly while continuing their usual banter.
How can you be so calm anyway? We're talking about death. Death! If you marry into Ortegard exactly as that book says, death is waiting for you, Lady Cheryl.
But panicking won't change anything either.
Even so.
And besides,
Cheryl cut off Sasha's attempt to argue further and closed her eyes. Then, for some reason, she puffed out her chest with a look of absolute confidence.
I have the knowledge from all the books I've hoarded until now. Knowledge is, so to speak, a person's experience points. With this knowledge, I'm sure I can manage somehow.
Sasha froze for a moment at that declaration as if caught off guard, then narrowed her eyes into a flat, skeptical stare.
I won't dispute that knowledge is experience, but I don't think you can use those experience points effectively, my lady.
Oh, and why is that?
Well then, has a single good solution occurred to you at this stage?
No, not at all.
See?
Sasha scurried ahead to block the path of the still-walking Cheryl.
Lady Cheryl, do you realize, depending on the user, a kitchen knife used for cooking can become a murder weapon, and even medicine can become poison if the dosage is wrong.
A knife? Poison? Are you telling me to kill my future husband?
I didn't say that. How did you reach that conclusion? What I'm saying is that it's impossible for a cool klutz like you to use knowledge to maneuver skillfully.
Cool klutz?
Cool klutz.
It will be fine. The wisdom of our ancestors is absolute.
Where does that confidence even come from?
Gracefully ignoring Sasha's cool klutz comment, Cheryl made a small fist against her chest. Sasha seemed to give up on persuasion for the moment and trudged along behind her.
I mean, is what's written in this book actually going to happen? What if it's all just complete nonsense?
As she spoke, Sasha gazed intently at Cheryl's autobiography held in her hands. The blue leather and silver foil stamping were very beautiful, but the contents were intense. After all, it explicitly stated Cheryl's death. Cheryl pressed a hand to her mouth at Sasha's doubt.
The flow of events so far has been perfect for that to be the case. It mentioned that Sasha would come to see me today, and it even contains detailed information about my childhood.
Then why is nothing written beyond this point?
Sasha opened the book toward the middle and showed it to her. The inside of the book was stark white. Sasha flipped through the pages as they were, but nothing was written further on. It seemed the text only covered the first half. Cheryl took the book that was pointed toward her.
I've been thinking, perhaps this book is still a work in progress?
A work in progress?
I suspect this book begins to be written once the stage where my death is 80% decided is reached. From there, it reflects on the past and writes about what is happening now.
So these blank pages are the future that hasn't been decided yet?
Yes, and I believe these few pages here are a future predicted based on my actions until now.
Cheryl pinched a few pages of text. There, it was written that the two of them were walking down the corridor and would have an audience with the king.
Then what about the last page?
The predetermined conclusion.
When Cheryl stated this firmly, Sasha held her head, her face turning pale.
So that means your death has been decided in advance.
Not necessarily.
Eh?
I noticed something while reading. The ink color used for the past pages describing what has already happened is different from the pages describing future events.
At Cheryl's words, Sasha took the book back and flipped through the pages. After going back and forth a few times, her eyes widened.
Black and gray?
Exactly. This is just my guess, but perhaps the parts written in gray ink represent an uncertain future? The future only becomes fixed once the ink turns black.
Upon hearing that, Sasha hurried to check the most important page.
The last page is black?
It's a gray that is as close to black as possible.
Which means we can change the future from here, right?
Perhaps.
What do you mean, perhaps?
Sasha let out a deep, exhausted sigh at the vague reply.
Well, either way, if we rely on this book, it means we can see a little bit into the future. I think this will be a powerful weapon alongside the Ark of Knowledge.
Well, I guess it's like a future diary. By the way, why isn't anything specific written in this book?
Sasha showed her a page describing things to come. The ink was gray, almost black. In other words, a future that was nearly certain. What was written there was,
I wonder what business my uncle has with me. Does he really intend to marry me off to Ortegard? Ha, I'm getting nervous as expected. Once I open this door, I won't be able to escape. Wait,
What is this, Why,
I suspect my internal thoughts are being turned directly into text. So something must have happened to make me think,
No. What could possibly make you think, Wait, you aren't thinking about anything at all, are you, my lady? Look at this. This string of sentences has no substance.
Oh, the book I read today was truly interesting. I didn't think my heart would squeeze like that, then feel all fluffy, then go thump thump. Wow, the little bird finally noticed the food I left out. So cute! Sasha is wrinkling her brow again. I wonder if I did something wrong. Still, wrinkling is such an interesting word. Since it means things coming together, does it mean the wrinkles are being friendly with each other? Oh, but wrinkles are grooves formed where skin gathers, so maybe the skin is what's being friendly. Then wouldn't the skin is gathering be more accurate than the brow is wrinkling? It's true. The information here is practically zero.
This is the inside of your mind, you klutz. You're such a klutz, my lady.
Listening to Sasha's voice, which sounded like she was on the verge of tears, Cheryl gave a wry smile.
Well, it'll be fine. Even if my uncle is about to announce the marriage, there's still time before I have to meet the partner. I just need to think of a countermeasure by then.
I wonder if it'll really be that easy.
In the meantime, the two arrived in front of the door. The king should be waiting in the audience chamber beyond. Sasha returned to her usual professional maid expression and knocked on the door.
Your Majesty, I have brought Lady Cheryl.
Upon hearing that voice from behind the door, Cheryl straightened her posture.
Once I open this door, I won't be able to escape.
As Sasha opened the door, Cheryl lowered her head. Entering the room with her gaze downcast, she drew one foot back and lightly bent her knees in a lady's curtsy.
Pardon me, Your Majesty. In response to your summons.
So you're Cheryl?
It was not the king's voice that interrupted Cheryl's greeting. At the sudden sound of a man's voice, she looked up. There were three people in front of her. One was Cheryl's uncle, the current king Roger Lorenz. Beside him was the sorcerer the king had been keeping close lately, Ian Kirsch. And the final person, likely the owner of the voice, was someone Cheryl did not recognize. Standing there was a young man with handsome features and a faint smile on his lips. He had a well-defined nose and thin lips that curved into an arc. His sharp yet somehow languid eyes held a golden glow, and his jet-black hair, which looked as though it had trapped the darkness of night, was tied at the nape of his neck and flowed down his back. He was tall, with long, slender limbs. He appeared to be about 23 or 24 years old. As Cheryl let out a bewildered sound, the king sitting on the throne turned his gaze toward the young man.
Cheryl, this is Marquise Valentino, who has come from the Ortegard Empire.
Tino?
I intend for you to
Before the king could finish his sentence, the young man moved. With light steps, he stood before Cheryl. Then, he directed a smile at her that was shrouded in a stiflingly sensual aura.
I thought something interesting was happening, so I couldn't resist coming to pick you up myself.
Pick me up?
Her face twitched from a bad premonition. Whether the young man noticed Cheryl's expression or not, he knelt before her to meet her eyes. Then, he took Cheryl's hand.
My name is Luke Valentino. Nice to meet you, my bride.
Indeed, with a state of mind that could only be described as, "Ah." Cheryl could do nothing but turn pale, her expression frozen in place. The courtyard was bathed in the warmth of spring. A soft light filtered through the trees, dappling the cheeks of the two individuals seated there. On a circular table draped in a white cloth, 2 sets of gold-rimmed cups and saucers had been prepared. The fragrance of tea, reminiscent of freshly bloomed flowers, wafted gently from the cups. Plates scattered with colorful floral patterns held neatly sliced fruit and sweets that were a delight to the eye. Participating in this serene tea party were a young girl with a smile seemingly plastered onto her face and a beautiful young man who appeared perpetually amused. They were Cheryl and Luke. After various discussions had progressed following their initial meeting, Cheryl had somehow found herself forced into a private tea party, under the pretense of leaving the rest to the young couple. By the way, through those various discussions, she had learned 2 things. First, it seemed Cheryl really was to be wed off to Ortegard. Second, her partner was the man sitting right in front of her. Furthermore, she discovered the fact that Cheryl's marriage wasn't a decision made by the Elvisian side, but was finalized at the persistent request of Ortegard.
Is this person truly going to kill me?
Cheryl thought to herself while stealing a glance at Luke. Because the text had described him as mercilessly beheading her, she had imagined a portly, large man with the face of an ogre. However, the man before her eyes seemed to be the exact opposite. While he possessed a somewhat intense allure, he looked like a fine young man from every angle. His mouth was constantly curved into a smile, and his temperament seemed gentle. He was tall, just as she had imagined, but he wasn't stout. Instead, he had a lean, toned physique that was evident even through his clothes. Perhaps because she was observing him so intently, Luke noticed Cheryl's gaze. He tilted his head, his expression remaining cheerful.
Is there something on my face?
No, there is nothing on it other than eyes, a nose, a mouth, eyebrows, and ears.
When she blurted that out in a panic, Luke looked taken aback for a moment, before bursting into a laugh. Cheryl, not understanding why he had started laughing, tilted her head in confusion. This seemed to amuse Luke even further, and his smile deepened.
So, Cheryl, what do you usually do with your time?
Me?
Her voice squeaked at the sudden question.
I usually spend my time reading books.
Books? What kind of books do you read? Stories and the like?
I read various things. Today I read a philosophical text focused on the theme of human existence, and an epic poem depicting the afterlife that is currently a popular topic. I also read one book on astronomy.
Luke looked surprised by Cheryl's answer.
You read quite serious books, don't you? I always thought girls read stories filled with a bit more dreams.
I read those kinds of books too. The ones I mentioned earlier are books I read as part of my duties.
Duties? Do you mean as an oracle?
Yes. My primary duty is to read books.
Due to the nature of the Ark of Knowledge, Cheryl, as an oracle, was required to read a fixed amount of books every day. No matter how incomprehensible or difficult the content, if she did not read them, the books would not be added to the infinite library. Therefore, Cheryl had been required to read mountains of books every day since she was a child. Fortunately, she did not find reading to be painful at all. Unaware of these circumstances, Luke seemed to interpret Cheryl's reading as acquiring the knowledge necessary for an oracle.
It sounds like the work of an oracle is tough, having to know so many things. But if you read books, even when they aren't related to your duties, I take it you don't dislike storybooks?
Yes, I love stories.
In that case, next time I'll send you a book I found interesting.
Really?
Cheryl's voice rose at the unexpected proposal. She didn't dislike the books she read for her duties, but stories were in a league of their own. She could immerse herself in them purely, and they invited her to various worlds and allowed her to experience so many things. Luke's eyes narrowed as he saw Cheryl's enthusiasm.
Yeah. It's a heroic epic, so I don't know if a girl would like it. There is a specific scene in that book that I especially like.
What kind of scene is it?
It's a scene where a wicked woman, who has done whatever she pleased until then, is executed.
Executed?
That word reminded her of her own autobiography. Under the watchful eyes of the public, my husband Lord Luke mercilessly swung his sword and beheaded me. Was Cheryl going to be executed after all for committing some kind of crime as punishment? Luke continued talking, wearing a mysterious smile that was slightly different from before.
That wicked woman is the princess of a certain country. Her evil deeds are exposed, and she is abandoned by her father, the king, and sent as a hostage to be married off to a neighboring country with which they had just formed a peace treaty. However, she doesn't learn her lesson and continues to commit all sorts of wicked acts in the neighboring country as well. Eventually, she is caught and executed.
That is, well, how should I put it?
Justice prevails and evil is vanquished. It's a very satisfying story, isn't it?
Luke smiled with a face that felt entirely devoid of malice. Yet, for some reason, Cheryl felt goosebumps at that expression. She found the carefree smile before her eyes to be terrifying for some reason.
But you know, this is just like us, isn't it?
Huh?
The situation. See? It's unavoidable.
As the conversation took an increasingly ominous turn, Cheryl's body stiffened. She felt as though Luke's gaze had shifted into one that was observing her. Luke reached his hand toward her. He picked up a strand of Cheryl's silver hair.
Cheryl, you're a kind and good girl, so I'm sure there's no need to worry. But you must be careful, so that you aren't executed, like that wicked woman.
The moment Luke brought that lock of hair to his lips, Cheryl stood up from her chair as if she could no longer bear it. At the same time, the sound of clattering dishes echoed around them. Cheryl's cup lost its balance and tipped over, and a brown stain spread across the tablecloth.
Ah, are you all right?
I feel as though my condition has suddenly worsened. If you will excuse me, I must leave.
Cheryl said only that before fleeing the scene as fast as her legs could carry her. Watching her back as she departed with all her might, Luke let out a wry chuckle.
Her condition worsened, huh?
His voice was distorted with amusement.
Welcome back, Lord Luke. How was the bride you went to see, even at the cost of putting your work on hold?
Luke was greeted with such sarcasm the moment he entered the room, and his expression turned weary. This was inside the Elvision Royal Palace, the room assigned to Luke. The man greeting him was about 2 years older than Luke. His name was Eric Halston. With short, dull brown hair and reddish-brown eyes, this man, who constantly looked displeased, served as Luke's close aide despite his youth.
If you didn't want to come along that badly, you didn't have to follow me.
When Luke retorted with a childish pout, Eric's expression became even more grim.
If there isn't a supervisor around, you would likely cause trouble and come back immediately. Besides, you are diving into a country that was an enemy nation until just the other day. It would be a problem if something happened, wouldn't it?
Could it be that you were worried about me?
I was not. If you do something unnecessary, I am the one who suffers.
Heh? I have no credit with you, do I?
Do you even intend to have any?
While brushing off Luke's lighthearted talk, Eric rubbed the bridge of his nose.
So, how was the bride?
She was just an ordinary girl. She felt like a princess who is ignorant of the world, for better or for worse.
I see.
And then, it got interesting. I threatened her a little, and she ran away.
She ran away. Honestly, you really intend to play with your bride?
As Eric's cheek twitched, Luke shook his shoulders in high spirits.
Good grief. You are truly something.
Don't be so angry.
I am not angry. I am exasperated.
Finding that reaction amusing, Luke laughed even more joyfully. After staring at Luke for a moment, Eric let out a sigh, as if giving up on something.
But no matter how amusing she is, please do not grow attached to her. She will eventually—
It's fine. There's no way I'd hesitate over something like that.
A cold smile appeared on Luke's face.
I'm going to kill Cheryl. As soon as the war begins.